The tranquil Donegal village of Dunfanaghy, in the lee of Muckish Mountain, is home to a man who during his life has not only been a filmmaker, cinema promoter and stand-up comedian, but once spent an entire day listening to the personal confessions of film star Elizabeth Taylor, and was asked by the celebrated Hollywood director George Cukor to come to America and start a new religion. All the more amazing when you realize the gentleman in question is a Roman Catholic priest, Father Tommy Doherty.
Well, when I got interested in films first, I was only about 5 or 6 years of age in a little town called Ramaston, where I was born. And the great event in that town each year was the coming of moving pictures, the Daniel show. And the projector was erected up in front of the screen. The hall was packed because everybody was excited, standing for an hour outside the hall and waiting to get in to see these things moving on the screen. And I remember one film was called The Voice on the Wire. And there was great excitement at that because it cost tuppence to get in. And you know, we hadn't a very good way of getting tuppence every night. But the serial it was, and each episode was very, very thrilling. And come tomorrow night to see how the Pearls of Pauline, I remember that. And she was at one stage tied to a stake on top of a pier. And then it showed the rats coming up underneath the pier, and come tomorrow night, what is going to happen, Pauline? And then coming out the door, a girl at the door belonging to the company gave you a glossy picture of Pauline. I remember taking that to bed with me and wondering would she be alive the following night. So that was the thrill I got at that time. And this, we used to call over to the hall when he would be making up the films, and some way or other I got the smell or the aroma of celluloid, and I suppose it never went out of my veins after that. But in those days it was a terrific thrill that people can't imagine now, of course. Well, from that on then, you see, developed that when I got personally attached to the film, it was in Scotland, because walking along a street in Greenock after I was sent there, I saw a little projector on a window, and I went in, and the chap was very nice, and he told me all about the projector and how you could take your own movies and show them then at home and so forth. And that thought I got thrilled about that, because if I could take some stuff and show it in my own little hall, then I could pack the hall. And so I asked him the price of the projector, and he said, £25. Well, that was like saying 25,000 to me now, because I hadn't a hope of getting it either. So he saw I was so keen, he said, well, couldn't we arrange that you would pay it up? So I said, all right. And I think it was £1 a week or whatever. But eventually I succeeded in getting it, and the camera as well. So I began then just by trial and error, and I was very lucky. I seemed to have an aptitude for taking pictures. It just didn't take too much or too little. Well, then later on I was called back to Ireland, and I was sent to a place called Mina Cross, 4 miles west of Dunlow. And you know, there was nothing there but seagulls. You stood at the door and you said to yourself, what am I ever going to do around here? Because the people were scattered all over the headlands. South you'd see Glencolmkill and Ardara and Portneuf, and north Mallinhead and so forth. However, there were things to be done, and I had to get cracking on it. And to make money, I thought I'd take out the camera again and take the fisherman out fishing, and scenery and so forth. And anything of interest in the town of Dunlow. Little show they had, I took that. And weddings, of course, weddings were terrific, because I tell you why crowds gathered to see the wedding, and they'll be looking at the bride the first night, and somebody would say, did you see you looked well in the film? I didn't see myself. Where was I? Oh, you were back, you were looking over the wall. I must come back tonight to see that. And the result was they would go for about a week. I remember the sensation on Dunlow, when I gave the first Dunlow show. They were queued up from the hall in Dunlow right down to the main street And I came in with a little machine, and I didn't know, I was nervous about it all. I went down to a house to test out the machine. I set up the machine and I started off, and bang went the lamp. And here I was with a spare lamp and afraid to try it out because the crowds were queued up. I remember that, going over and setting up the machine in the hall. I was nearly afraid to open the doors. However, they came in and they came in and came in and they packed out, and this was their first showing, the first seeing of the local stuff. And when the hall was packed and I ordered the lights to go out, I switched on the machine and I breathed. And then the thing went all right. And after 10 minutes, everything was okay, and there was great applause and great shouting and screeching and laughing and whatnot. They were silent, of course, you see, and that gave them a great chance. I was delighted because I had no spare lamp. And I was confined, of course, to places where there was electricity, and that wasn't every place, because the ESB hadn't started, and the local supply in Donegal was run by Paddy or Paddy the Cope. And if Paddy took a notion, he just knocked off the machine and went to bed, left us all in the dark. I'll tell you another little story. There was a chap who ran pictures, and he came to me and he said, my film didn't come. Have you anything you could give me at all? Well, all I had to do would be ring up the film renter and tell them that, and they were always gracious about it. But I hadn't anything to give him. And it was a Sunday when he ran the pictures in Ballabafay. And I was in Conway, 6 miles away, and I said to him, no, I can't do anything. There's nothing at all you can do for me, he says, because he was depending on it. He was married and had a family. And, well, I got a brainwave. Says, I tell you, what time do you start? He says, I start at 8 o'clock. Well, says I, now I start at 9. I tell you what we'll do. We'll run the one film in the 2 places. You take 4 reels with 4 reels, I think it was, or 2 reels with them. And you start at 8, and the 2 reels will run about 40 minutes. I'll go up with 2 more reels, and I'll bring back the 2 that you have, and I'll start here at 9. I said, that'll work out all right. He said, will you manage it? So I tackled it, and I did 4 runs, I think it was, to Ballabafay, up and down, and he was able to put them on and give me the 2 that he had used. And I came back, and the last journey down, I began to laugh because I had seen bits of the film where I'd been in both places, and it was a dud. No life in it at all, no action of any kind. And I could imagine a fella and his girl in the butt hole in Ballabafay saying, this is a dud, come on down to Conway and we'll see a decent show. I could imagine them coming down, you see, the same show. So that's the way it went on, and
It also led you to meet quite a number of famous people from the world of film.
well, through booking films and getting to know the renters and all that, I did. I met, first of all, I was brought over to Elstree Studios, where they were making Edward, My Son. And Spencer Tracy I got to know well for the week. As a matter of fact, he brought me out on location with him to Hammersmith and all these places. And I found him a very, very quiet, decent sort, and a genius as regards acting. The camera crew told me they never had to take more than 3 takes of Spencer Tracy. Often others would be 14 takes. And Spencer, no, 3 takes. He was a natural. And he wanted to come back to Ireland with me. Well, unfortunately, I had to go back to New York to finish the film. So I knew Spencer, I got to know him that way. And then through the renters, I got to know, met, well, Liz Taylor. She was in Dublin with Burton, the spy who came in from the cold. And of course, I know Cyril Cusick for years and years. I always stayed with the Cusicks. So Cyril said that I hadn't been in Ardmore Studios, and he said, well, if we're ever doing a film there, I'll let you know. So he did. And I went up, and Maureen Cusick and I went out to Ardmore, and we saw Cyril starting off to do a scene with Burton. And while we were looking at the scene, Liz Taylor came along, and she looked at me as if to say, what are you doing here? And I looked back at her and I said, I wonder who you are, that type of thing, you know. And anyway, when it was all over, she disappeared, but Burton called her back and introduced her to me, and we went down to his dressing rooms, Gerald Cusick and Burton and people, journalists and all that. And Liz did the needful with the drinks, and then she asked me, could she have a talk with me? And I said, all right. So she sat down and she started, and I think she ended after about 6 hours. I know anyhow that we stopped to go to a pub in Bray, and she restarted where she left off and told me her whole life story, but she told me she knew I wouldn't divulge it at all. But I got a good impression of her, Liz Taylor, because she was a very worried girl and very simple, very natural.
You had a very strange offer from George Cukor, hadn't you?
George Cukor. Yeah, he was over directing a film, and I always had the camera with me, and I took them, I can't recollect the name of that film. I took the prisoner escaping from Slane Castle down, the horse had after him and all that, and Cukor saw me doing all this, and he came to me and he said, would you come out to Hollywood and show what you've taken? I said, why should I do that? Well, it'll show them in Hollywood that I do a bit of work. They think I don't do any work at all. This will prove that I do work. So there's only a couple of snags about that. What? Well, first of all, time. A long holiday, you get 3 weeks. Well, he says a week going out and a week there and a week coming back. It was as simple as that. I said, that's all right, but what about cash? Oh, cash. Well, now, yeah, I'm a Jew, he says, and you're a Catholic priest. Do you know, he said, if you'd let me know you're coming, I'll book a hall for one night. One night. We'll start a new religion just for one night. A Jew and a Catholic priest, and we'll pack out, he says, and I'll give you $40,000. He says, a lot of others have tried that, and they're doing it well, and they're getting off with it.
Did you take up his offer?
I didn't know, I didn't. Well, then I got to know Barry Fitzgerald, and Barry, Sir Cusick came down to stay with me in Donegal town. And there's a funny episode there because Barry, we sat up to 2 o'clock in the morning, and Barry went to bed. And when I went up to see was he all right, because my house was a bit out in the country at that time, and it was a hot night, and I thought maybe he wanted blinds drawn, curtains drawn. And he was sitting up in bed, and he said, no, everything was all right, but maybe it would be all right to pull them. I went over, and just as I was walking over, I began, and began like being singing, and just when I finished, Barry looks at me and said, good night. So I came down to Cyril and said, you know, I'm after doing a scene with Barry up there in the room that cost Paramount about $50,000. But there's one character in Donegal town that he had a shop, and his man on the screen was Barry Fitzgerald. I booked Barry, he would close the shop to go there, and when are you getting Barry, and so forth. So Barry was leaving me, and he says, I'm short of petrol. So I followed me, and I brought him into the shop where this man sold petrol. And I went into the shop, and he was standing talking to 2 men. He had his back to me, and I tapped him on the shoulder and said, Barry Fitzgerald wants petrol out there. He turned to me and he says, you're already joking. Barry Fitzgerald, not at all, no. So he does. No. So Barry came in looking for tobacco, and he turned and he met Barry, and I can see him yet staring at Barry. Here is his little god, the man that he caught him by the hand and he held on to him, you know. So he came out, he got him the tobacco, and then he came out to the pump, and he got the petrol pump, and he would look at Barry, and he didn't charge him for the petrol. I think Barry Fitzgerald should come, you know, and appeared to him in Donegal. I got cracking to give a show on Innisfree Island. And the only way of letting the people know that it was coming would be to go to the top of this mountain. It was a climb of about 2.5 miles. And it was on the way to Innisfree. I stopped the car, I had good lights in my own car, and flash twice or three times. And the islanders would see the flash and they would know there was a show in the school. They'd go and get the thing ready, get the school ready, and not only that, but they'd bring the boat out and they were there ready to meet me when I got down to the show. So we packed everything into the boat and off we went and set up in the school and gave the show, and then all the islanders gathered into this big house at night and we had a terrific night. Teas, sandwiches, everything you wanted, and then the storytelling and the songs and so forth. So it was one great night. I used to do that about every 3 months or so, when I would get a program together.
What was your biggest scoop?
I suppose the biggest scoop might be the Gentleman Jim episode. That was a great film. It was running in the Adelphi in Dublin. I was up booking films, and I happened to be in the film company that owned Gentleman Jim. And I said, any chance of getting Gentleman Jim? So, no, it's going to run here for a long time, and then it goes to Waterford or Cork and Limerick and all that, and no, it'll be a good while. Well, he says, we'll see about it later on anyhow. And then I got on to talk about golf because he was not keen on golf. And says, how's the golf going? Oh, not well at all. Why? Oh, sure, I have no petrol. I can only get to Portmarnock once a week. And no petrol at all? No, not at all, no. So I said, well, maybe that would help. And I put my hand in my pocket and I threw him a 10-gallon coupon. And he looked at it and he said, you can't give this away. Now, I at home used to get a lot of these coupons from lorry drivers. Sure, if you want it. Oh, Lord, he says, that'll keep me in golf for a long time. So what about another one here? Here's another one for you. And, oh, he says, this is terrific, this is terrific. I'd be able to go now 3 nights a week to Portmarnock and so forth. Well, I'm glad, says I, that I was able to help you out anyway. By the way, he says, you were talking about Gentleman Jim. So he called a girl in and he said, would you let me know the returns on Gentleman Jim for the last 3 weeks? Oh, he said to me first, how much would you be able to give me for Gentleman Jim? Says I, I could give you £5 a week. £5 a week. £5 a week, yeah. So he called a girl in and he says, what have we got from the Adelphi for the last 3 weeks? She says 45,000. So that's 15,000 a week. He says, yes. Oh, well, I said, maybe I could give you 710 a week. Never thinking that anything was going to happen. Well, he says to the girl now, about the bookings, yes, let me have a look at the bookings. It goes on to less, yes. We cut out Sligo, he says, now, just put in Convoy. So I got the picture in Convoy, Gentleman Jim, and it was a terrific sensation because there was at least one man in Parish who was at the fight. Jack Johnson against Corbett. And Earl Flynn was doing Corbett's part, and he told me afterwards that you'd swear it was Corbett. He saw the fight himself, this man. And the crowds flocked to Convoy for Gentleman Jim, and this man was coming down from Ballybofey. He was sitting in the bus, and the man beside him says, could you tell me where we're coming to now? And he says, this little village is Convoy. I'm coming down to see a picture here tonight. That's so, yeah, a picture called Gentleman Jim. Nonsense, he says. That picture wasn't even in Sligo yet. Won't be there for months. So nobody knew how it came to Convoy. I didn't mean to blackmail the man, but he was so delighted to get the petrol coupons that other people had to wait for Gentleman Jim.
Father Doherty, you pioneered bringing cinema into rural Ireland, but how did that era come to an end?
Well, it came about by the introduction of TV, because people were able to see shows in their own homes and they wouldn't come out to a hall. And most halls in the country anyway You had to have heat, and you hadn't the comfort that you had at home. And the result was that the shows began to deteriorate. And then the taking of the films, I mentioned before about taking weddings and all that, video came in. And there again, there was no point in going out and taking a film of it and asking them to come to a hall to see it if they could see it in their own homes with video. So, in a way, it's a terrible thing to think that that has passed away, because I'll tell you why. Recently, I gave a show in a big hall, packed. The hall was packed. In fact, those that ran the show for charity thought they didn't charge enough because they got £600 on the door at £1 each. Now, I was operating the machine, and the people packed that hall that night and couldn't get enough of that stuff. I had to give a running commentary, and I was explaining everything, and I had fashion shows, and I had all that sort of thing. And they told me they would come back every night in the week to see it. And I remember one man said to me that he came with a wife. He was a stranger. He came into the hall. I thought it was an ordinary cinema, and he was surprised to see that it was local stuff. And he said he couldn't leave because he didn't know what was coming next. It was also fascinating that way. He says, you go into a film and you know after maybe 10 minutes you're not going to enjoy it at all. And I said, well, it's a mixture and all that. Oh, but he said, it's very good. And I could get the feeling that night from the applause and the, when you know come back again style of thing, that they're missing something that was really very, very good for a community.
Did you ever imagine what life might have been like for you if you had become a film director instead of a priest?
It's a funny thing that you should ask me that, because a lady here, one day a visitor, said to me, if you hadn't been a priest, you could have made millions. Do you think so? I said, oh, yeah, sure. No trouble about it. Would you not like that, she says? Would you not like to be a film star? Well, I said, there's another way of looking at that. If I had gone on like that and become a film star, I could have married Liz Taylor, and then she would divorce me, and then I'd be in a bad fix. So I'm happy as I am.
Andy Warhol once remarked that in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. Father Tommy Doherty made that dream come true years ago for those inhabitants of rural Ireland who snuggled together in drafty village halls to watch moving pictures of their real live selves at work and play. Nowadays, with the taken for granted availability of television and radio, we have perhaps lost an innocence that watched enraptured the flickering frames of those homespun epics.